And we're live.
Hey everyone! Thanks so much for joining us today from Althea with on this last day of the National Digital Inclusion Week, and I'm here today with some of my most favorite folks and awesome rock stars and advocates for digital inclusion. And I wanted to focus today on the conversation around underserved folks in urban areas, which is often a kind of a section of folks that isn't well talked about. We talk a lot about rural people and building new infrastructure, and we really haven't talked a lot about the communities that are underserved in urban areas where there might already be infrastructure and the reasons behind that. So I am really excited to have some kind of real, kind of hard-hitting conversation with the folks that are, on the ground and working together with these communities. So if you're in the audience in YouTube, please feel free to, throw some questions in there. I'm here today with Will, who is the community manager of Althea. He can help, pop those questions up for us to kind of talk about. And, please feel free to join the dialogue or find us on Discord or Twitter or anywhere else where we might be able to see or hear your comments and chat about them. So with that, I'd like to take a few minutes to introduce Nishal Mohan. Am I pronouncing that last name right?
Yeah, that's perfect.
And Isfandiyar Shaheen, I think is your last name. Is that right? I think Isfandiyar is just joining us here with audio. So Nishal, if you want to kick us off with some introduction about yourself and your work and the intersection with digital inclusion in urban areas, I think that would be great. And then we'll have Isfandiyar introduce himself after that.
Cool. Well, Deb, thanks for having me here. It's always great to hang out with you, whether in person or online, virtually. This is a really great cap to the end of Digital Inclusion Week. It's been a fantastic Digital Inclusion Week for us, and just the biggest in the country so far. I think it's the 5th with billboards and everything. So we had big announcements. Somehow they even gave us a 3/4 of a page in the top newspaper in San Diego. So that was pretty awesome. So to all of those who care about democratizing the internet and crushing the digital divide, my name is Nishal. To everyone else, just call me Dr. Mohan. So I'm the founder of MoHuman, which is a nonprofit that was founded in 2018 to drive the transfer of power and resources to digitally underserved people through access to the internet and digital services for everything: school, work, health, government engagement, and so on. Yeah, Deb, I didn't know how much you want me to share more of my background, or if that's fine.
Yeah, I think just to kind of give us a little bit about the work that you're doing in San Diego, and why you're doing it there, and what kind of what brought you to that work, where you're at so far, kind of a little bit of preface of that, I think would be great. Lead into the further conversation.
Okay, so way back in the time, so I was born in South America, grew up across the Caribbean without cool technology like electricity or indoor plumbing or running water. But it was when I finally came to the United States that we really had access to computers and internet. I say access because I didn't own any of these things. I could use it, but it was what enabled me to get to get where I am today. PhD at Princeton. Work with the Obama administration, National Science Foundation to push big data policy, next generation internet, and smart cities technologies. And I worked with over 30-something cities. But as much as I tried to get these smart cities to embrace the digitally underserved communities of color, immigrants, and marginalized folks, they just couldn't do it, didn't know how to do it, or straight out didn't want to do it. So I said, you know what? Screw this. I gotta do something about this. So I formed MoHuman, for better or worse. And today I can say it's probably for the better. We focus on helping the most marginalized, and we start with urban areas, promise zones across the U.S. And there are 22 of these across the U.S. They are some of the most economically disadvantaged places and communities in the country defined by the Obama administration. I'm here in San Diego, so we're piloting all of our digital services, all of our community engagement, and all of the strategies that we use here in San Diego to scale across other promise zones and other communities that are digitally underserved. So first of all, it's called MoHuman because it's about the human element in science and technology. It's also more street, right? Mo money, mo human. The Institute for whatever is just like, this is for the people and by the people. So first, we build community. We work with communities, right? Before tech, right? We find out what the problems are and how to solve them together. We're not working at people. We're working with people. And that's one of the biggest, this week was so rough with some meetings, but people are just working at other people, holding each other's hands and going around in a circle saying, oh, look at us, look how great work we're doing, but it never reaches the people. You know, that $1 million, that $1 billion, it never reaches the people. It's just in your circle. So that's what we're changing.
Yeah, I just want to echo that sentiment again. It's always frustrating to me to see that money that's coming down to help marginalized and underrepresented folks, but no one in policy, you know, spends any time in these communities. So we don't really meet people where they're at. We don't understand the nuanced issues, you know, and that the money just gets misallocated every time. And I think the other kind of thing that that resonated with me when you were talking was the intersectionality of digital access, right? I mean, oftentimes it is a racial issue too, right? Like if I look at the statistics in Portland, Oregon, 13% of people there don't have access to the internet. When we look at the Hispanic population, it's 30%, right? So these things, you know, intersect with many of the other, you know, pain points in our communities too. And I also think that, like, you know, when we talk about maybe digital inclusion, I like to think about it as digital divided, you know, communities, because it's not just like you have just underrepresented people or lower income people. You have businesses and you have, you know, middle income. You have it's all together, right? So like I love the way that you work together with the community in like a really holistic way. So just amazing. I really respect the work that you do.
Thank you.
All right, Asfi, you want to share a little bit about yourself and what your work on digital inclusion?
Deborah, I've been having trouble hearing you, but tell me if you can hear me, not if you can hear me. And just so I'm
We can
clear,
hear
at
you.
this point, you want me to introduce myself? Is that right? Because I've had trouble listening in. Okay. Hopefully this works because it's kind of interesting. I'm having a conversation, but I can't hear you, but I guess you can hear me. Look, in a I'm from Pakistan, went online for the first time when I was 13 years old. Going online really changed my life for the better. And many years later, I found myself building a cellular tower sharing company in my country, Pakistan. And that exposed me to this observation that cell towers were everywhere globally, yet half the world was not online. And many of these cell towers were really empty. They had the space, they had the power, they had the bandwidth, but somehow half the world was still not online. And at some point, I decided to quit my career, which was in the world of doing deals and building tower companies, to say, I don't know how to solve this problem, but it seems kind of important. So let me just try to figure out a way to chase this internet for all dream. That
Oh no, I think we might have lost Asfi's feed there right during the pinnacle of this really inspiring talk
led to
about.
a number of things happening.
All right, well, let's go ahead and mute Asfi for now and kind of come back to him. Maybe we can direct message him a little bit and see if we can grab him when he's in a little bit better of a connectivity situation, which does lead to another one of my.
Built this partnership with Facebook, which.
Well, are you able to mute him?
I'm trying, but.
Okay. Hey, Hey, Osvi, if you can hear us, let's wrap. Let's kind of come back to you when you're in a little bit better connectivity situation. And we'll move on to, Will, introducing yourself really quickly here before we get into drum roll. Really cool announcements. So hang in there. Let's introduce Will, and then we'll talk about some really cool stuff that Nishal and Althea is doing. Oh, and then I have to introduce myself too. So I'll do that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Deborah. Just briefly, my name is Will. I'm the new community manager for Althea Networks, and I'll just keep it short and sweet. Native of Portland, Oregon, and just been in the bounced around the blockchain sphere for the last few years, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Will. We're excited to have you on board, help keeping everything organized and really communicating well with all of the folks that are really excited about Althea and the work that we do. And with that, I'll give just a brief introduction. I think most of the folks that have been around Althea know what we do, but I'm Deborah Simipier. I'm a co-founder and the CEO of Althea, which is a platform for routing and billing for multi-entity or multi-stakeholder networks. So this means that instead of one large monoculture type of a corporation owning both the service layers and then all of the infrastructure of the network and charging like a rent, we can decouple that service layer, which can be locally governed and operated, from the infrastructure of the network, and then many different existing entities and new entrants can be participants in the infrastructure of the network, whether that's fiber or a tall tower for vertical access. Whatever that looks like, we can utilize existing infrastructure that exists in the community, and then new entrants can participate, which I think is like really a good segue to the work that we've been doing together in San Diego. Nishal, do you want to share a little bit about what that looks like and some of the partners that have been involved in that, and then we'll.
Yeah, for sure. Do we have enough time to build Osvi a little mesh network so he's got better?
Yeah, I'll get right on that after this call.
So everybody thinks about San Diego and it's like, the best place, the best weather, rich folks, everything. But there's a promise zone here. There's at least 45,000 people just in that 6.2 square mile area that don't have at-home internet. This is a low-income area. This is a physically redlined area. And what that means is they have literally drawn a red line around these communities that says, poor people, no investments, no infrastructure in these areas. If you look at internet speeds there, for those who are connected, more money for less and less reliable speeds compared to other areas. And that's where we work, right? There are a lot of people that are just not connected. I mean, people talk about the homework gap, right? After COVID. I mean, 59% of parents in lower income households who had to do remote work during the pandemic for their kids from school, they said they faced at least one of three things: no internet connection at home, no computer for the kids, and also actually needing a smartphone to connect to complete homework, right? And you've seen those pictures of kids in parking lots, right? At a Wendy's or somewhere, right? But actually they're going to school parking lots as well at nights with their parents on one of these little devices, two kids to do their homework, right? And this is what really gets to us. So we worked with the city to see what they can do during this time. The internet service providers, they were doing their own thing, right? And redlined area, we didn't know what they were doing. What the city decided to do was to work with internet service providers to provide outdoor Wi-Fi, right? I guess if kids are going to parking lots, it means
I really want
to do it there.
I really want the folks that set that policy to sit in a parking lot with two kids in the backseat of the car and then decide if that's really the solution for our communities.
And that's the social divide. That's a big part of the digital divide. These people who are making decisions don't understand what it's like. Hey, a kid doesn't have a computer. Let's give them a computer. But there's so many systemic inequities that are involved that need to be solved.
Well, and can we talk about the typical computer is a Chromebook, right? That isn't fully functional, that doesn't have like a full functioning office system. It's great, it's a stopgap, but this isn't a full computer, right? It's not. I don't work on a Chromebook. Do you work on a Chromebook, right? Like so.
Yeah,
I think that's like the bare minimum, and I think we want to give everyone awesome services, great internet, good devices, the things that they need to do to be thriving, and not just the bare minimum.
and that's the situation in this country where we have to get 5-year-old computers from the government or organizations or corporations, clean them up and give them to people. It helps a lot for those who can't afford these computers and get them. But we're at a point where technology is so cheap, there's no need for it to be so expensive, right? We're spending trillions of dollars on other things. Computers for everyone? Come on, high tech. So not poor technology for poor people, which seems to be the trend. And that brings us to the network, right? And what Deb and I are doing.
This just makes economic sense though, right? Because what happens within communities where we do give awesome services, the state-of-the-art devices, things that people need to do to work and to learn and to thrive, that money comes back into the communities. We know that it increases property values. We know that statistics say that healthcare is better. We know that statistics say that the economic benefit is $4 to $6 for every dollar spent. So not only is this the morally right thing to do, it just makes dollars and cents.
Good pun. Good point.
Sneak that in there.
And, a lot of the low-income communities in these areas are BIPOC communities. Communities of color and immigrants and so on. And you have to deal with generational issues, right, from systemic inequities. So in a time like COVID and this pandemic where everything is online, from education to work to your business to healthcare, if you're not getting those things, that generational gap that you already have just becomes worse, right? You're falling behind, not just behind the students in your class, but a whole generation behind. And it's terrible. I know what this is like. I mean, I don't want to, but from back in the day, I know what it takes to get over it. And we're just trying to help everyone have an easier time than we did back in the day. And so no internet. There are people that are unserved, right? I know we're going to probably talk about the electronic benefit program and subsidies for internet. Quick piece of data. The internet service providers have said like 98% or more of those who have signed up for these benefits to get subsidized internet from the government were existing customers. So there are millions of people who can't be reached. There are no money for that. So what we're doing is we're working with the community-based organizations and the communities to reach those who can't be reached or are unreachable for whatever reason, who are unconnected or underconnected. And we decided, you know what, we've got digital services that we need to bring to tackle all of these systemic inequities. You know what? Let's work with the best, most badass people we can find who care about the internet, who've got new ways of thinking, moonshot mentality, and not take business from ISPs, but work with those that can't be reached, that need all the help they can get. And that's where Deb and I came in. We got introduced by, I don't know how many like leaders in this world know you, Deb. You're like a legend. I would hear about you. And finally, I think it was Mei Lin from People Centered Internet who was like, hey, you know Deb? I'm like, yeah, I've heard about her. So we met, and it's a good story from there. I mean, we met, and it was like, you know what? Let's build a network. Let's go do it. So we partnered with the Qualcomm Institute at UCSD. We partnered with a whole bunch of community-based organizations in the San Diego Promise Zone. That partnership also included CENIC, which is one of the research and education networks that provides internet to anchor institutions, universities, schools, libraries, and so on, to see if we can bring another aspect to the story of social good, right? Doing good for your community. You should have a responsibility to that, right? And with social good corporations, companies like Deb's, right? And it was just, we did this, we have been looking at equipment, testing. working with the community, looking at, the CBRS spectrum, looking at, direct line of sight technology that gives up to ultra high speed internet to lower speeds, but more penetrable. So we did all of this. I learned a lot from Deb, and we have partnered as like connected at the hip now to bring this technology and scale to a full pilot that's much bigger, at least 1,000 people within the next year here, to prove that we can do this with quantitative and qualitative data showing that the community can be a part of this, they can own it, they can run it, right, to however far we can do that, and that we can provide this internet at a certain cost for people that's not, unheard of. So I'm going to throw it over to you, Deb. I'm just going to shut up because I'm pumped about this stuff.
Yeah, no, and I think you just said so many amazing things there, Nishal. I think one of the amazing things about the work that you've done is that with the community piece, that's so important. I mean, we've seen a lot of efforts to bring in connectivity in different places that didn't have it, and it's always like we're gonna bring in some hotspots, or we're gonna come in and do this. But what was so exciting about what you said is you brought in the community organizations that are working directly with the community members there. And then also we brought in, data and working directly with those folks. So we're making sure that we're serving them where they're at right now. And you have a university, the UCSD and the Qualcomm Institute that's stepping up to be, stewards in their community and support and give outreach. And I hope that serves as an example to other universities who are in the position in their communities that they can provide that access. And then further, we have Scenic, right? Also Scenic, an amazing organization. I've worked with them in tribal broadband. And they serve as a really shining example of what these NRANs or fiber networks can do to serve their communities. And so I respect the work that you've done to sort of bring everyone together. And then there's Althea there, a coordinating platform by nature, right? That is going to be sort of the boots on the ground, or I think usually I talk about us, helping with, build infrastructure, being the pipes, right? The internet's a series of pipes. Fancy pipes. So that's a reference to the famous, the internet is a series of tubes. So that coordination of the infrastructure layer, which is so important, as well as where, I think we can provide a lot of the benefit. I'm so excited about this partnership, and I think it will serve as, like you said, the example that other communities can follow in the future. So.
And Scenic, it was announced that Scenic for California is the middle mile administrator by Gavin Newsom's office. So that's great. And NRENs are all across the U.S., but also we're supplementing it with internet service providers that can provide some of the capabilities for us as well, because we all need to be a part of this to solving the digital divide. All of us, we've got to play well to help people at scale.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I'm really excited about, piloting and proving out too, is that it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. I believe that internet service providers can, step up, especially when you're decoupling that service layer from the infrastructure, provide services, earn revenue, and, enter new markets that they weren't in before. We can provide connectivity for their community, our communities, even folks of lower income, and earn more income than they did before. And I think this is I always think about the example of the 73 million people that use prepaid phones. That's a big market. I mean, I think if carriers and ISPs have a better way to be able to provide service, whether that's through Althea's platform, where you have they can provide bandwidth or vertical assets and earn revenue that way. That, and also our flexible payment and free tier structure that allows, flexibility for networks and for carriers to be able to, capture that market in a really positive way. And here's go ahead, Nishal. Sorry.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, by the way.
Deb, a quick question for you. So one of the intriguing things about what you did and what's so interesting is, it's a part of democratizing the internet. One of the systemic inequities you were really concerned about is finance, and the way that the Althea framework works in finance and community, payback and ownership and sharing. That resonated so well with everything that we've been doing. Can you tell everyone a little bit about that so they understand what it is? Because to me, that was just so awesome.
Yeah, I think there's two kind of really, poignant aspects of that. I mean, one is the ability for different community members to be part of the network itself, right? Whether that's leasing roof space or like the university providing bandwidth, they can all be part of that network and, participate in revenue sharing. And I think that's, really amazing. You're sort of making these big digital cooperatives from infrastructure, which allows us lots of like flexible things. But the other thing I think we really want to talk about, and I think this is really poignant for urban folks, is that a lot of people are underbanked or, unbanked. And one of the big things that I realized is that people are using their corner stores or gas stations. And apparently now the post office is going to get involved in providing some banking access. But this is one of the main reasons why people don't access the internet right now, right? We have a lot of people with broadband debt. I mean, you're not getting Comcast Essentials if you owe Comcast $400. And in fact, you may not be getting any internet because you're just saddled with that debt, or you have issues with credit, or you're undocumented, or, a variety of reasons why you can't access, banking. Means how are you going to pay that bill? I don't care if the bill's $5. If you don't have access to banking, you can't you can't pay that. And very, very few places have cash, they take cash, right? So one of the things that we want to be able to do and what we see the future leading to is having, this is why we're in blockchain, is that we can empower people to be able to own their own, money and be able to do things, to take out loans, to earn interest. And there's something uniquely equitable about that ownership that I think we don't see. And I think telco is the platform for that. So
MoHuman, Mo money.
Yep. And I think, Osby, I know we haven't had a chance to introduce you yet, but you're also involved in, blockchain and DeFi. I'd be curious about your, the intersectionality of that particular issue and in the digital divide, or if you see that intersection too. Do you have good enough connectivity to talk with us for a few minutes?
Let's see. Look, I don't know. I mean, I am still on the road. I was expecting better connectivity, but first tell me if you can hear me, and then we'll explore further. I don't want to spoil the show for a great conversation that's happening already.
So far, so good. Let's give it a try, Asfi.
Look, short answer, absolutely, yes, there is. I think for me, the essence of the problem from a finance perspective is that internet is a utility, but it's not treated like one. And at the heart of that observation is the fact that when utility infrastructure like toll roads or power plants or electrical distribution systems are financed, demand risk is not assumed by private capital. When demand risk is assumed by public capital, then you can achieve cost-based pricing. Cost-based pricing is pretty key to achieve for a public utility like the internet. And that's kind of the stalemate that we're in, which is why telecom companies and internet service providers never find it profitable to serve underserved areas. For me, one of the, I would say, things that I've tried to solve is, how to unlock financing without an individual source of capital that assumes demand risk. And in that, I mean, the deal that we're doing in Nebraska is pretty interesting. And the Althea kind of enables something pretty cool, which is for different stakeholders who just come in and agree to a revenue share. And so, just very briefly, if the infrastructure provider, the equipment provider, the person who's doing the labor, if they all agree to do a revenue share, you've spread out demand risk very effectively. And that's the plumbing of that is very nicely provided by Althea. But the phase two of that is what I'm currently exploring within decentralized finance and all the wonderful things that money Legos within blockchain offer that traditional finance just doesn't. I'm a traditional finance guy. And now when I get to play with the new money Legos, it is absolutely fascinating because they can do the kind of gymnastics that my old world could not do. Like self-repaying loans are a thing in decentralized finance. I mean, there's a lot going on in decentralized finance. I don't want to like completely, take the conversation off topic there. But short answer is there's a lot going on there that can help. But the important part is Althea and two things in Althea: the fact that you can turn routers into crypto wallets, and the fact that you have a price aware protocol are like two essential Legos on which more Legos can be built. And I look forward to the day when we can, start deploying fiber in rural areas in America using DeFi.
Yeah, and one thing I want to thank you for that, Osby. One thing I wanted to kind of chat about there too is that those money Legos or the telco Legos that we look at here are all based on choice, right? So right now, the way the internet is, right? I mean, people don't have choices about things. Well, somebody does. It's the monopolistic telcos. Big telco has lots of choices about how you receive internet. And that's what we're trying to change, right? Is that those Legos, the composability can actually be your choice. We can have folks be able to deploy more infrastructure themselves and be part of the network. They can also choose about what kind of latency they want to pay for, what kind of priority they on the tower. There's no reason why we can't let the slicing of a 5G and all these cool things that are coming in with the new technology. Why can't we have the user have choice about what priority they want to pay for on the tower, which carrier they want to pay for on like a second by second basis? And that's kind of the grand vision of Althea is that those choices are now in the hands of the users. But yeah,
I think the other thing that I really like about what you guys say and try to do is like inside a data center you have access to a free and open market of multiple bandwidth providers. Outside the data center you don't, and you guys have been trying to bring that to the edge, which is really cool. But at the same time, I just want to say that look, it's not like the telcos are bad or the cable companies are bad. They're all good, hardworking people working in there. The challenge is that the incentive structure doesn't allow them to do certain things that we think ought to be done. And so I'll just add that people are never the issue. It's the incentive structure that's the issue. And I think that's the part that really needs to be, observed. And I think what's really cool about bringing user-owned infrastructure is that incentives of the community become very closely aligned with the infrastructure owner. I mean, that's kind of why we've also seen electric cooperatives do fairly well in rural America in terms of deploying fiber and also in terms of deploying electrical infrastructure to begin with. So, yeah, I think that's kind of my 2 cents on telcos and ISPs. Incentive structure is the challenge. That's what we need to try and change.
Well, and I think too, part of what we're talking about and what we'll continue to talk about today is that it doesn't necessarily make sense to have granting or capital investment into systems that are fundamentally broken. Like we have to reinvent these systems, right? And that's I think what's interesting about this group here is that we with different kind of facets, right? Osby's working a lot on the finance side. We're working a lot on what the infrastructure looks like, and Nishal's working a lot on the social aspects of those things and making sure that we are aligning with the people that we're working to serve. But I think if we've always always do what we've always done, we're always going to get yet another round of granting infrastructure being not allocated the right way.
And that's a big concern I have too, because if we look at the infrastructure bill that may pass soon, $65 billion for broadband. We've worked really hard with our partners across the United States to get the Digital Equity Act in there, get digital redlining abolished, right? And get all of these things in there. So that's good. we've also been working at the state level to make sure that the money is going to be allocated in the right way to cities. And then we have to make sure that from the bottom up, all of these community-based organizations and activists know what the rules are so they can't pull a fast one on them, so that they can go to city council members to push the city government to make sure that they follow those rules and the money comes to the communities. But there's so many levels there for money to just go the way it's always gone. That's not to the community, and it scares me. There's no time in history we're going to get this amount of funding and attention to broadband, and I've got goosebumps just thinking what it could go the way it's always gone, but there's hope that it'll go differently.
Well, and I'm curious your thoughts too, if you could expand a bit on, I think where sometimes it breaks down is you have local leadership, municipal leadership, or county, or whoever has to these leadership is making the decision about where the capital is spent. And they say, well, these larger telcos, these legacy telcos, I know them, they're a known quantity, I'm not going to get fired if these projects go wrong. But if I try a new solution, then that may negatively affect, my job, even if it goes, it goes moderately well. So I'm curious about your thoughts and perspective from a policy perspective on how we combat that challenge. How do we introduce new entities, new ideas in ways that are, a little bit more palatable for leadership to sign on to?
I mean, they want the easy way, right? The city is a beast. The city government, municipal government, they have a lot to deal with. They're siloed inside in horrendous ways, right? But they should be working together. It's just the way it's set up. And the problem is that they need an easy way. The easy way, with the telcos already there with infrastructure and the lobbying power and money that they have, they're always there. They're always present, right? What we need to do and what we're trying to do here is to show with qualitative and quantitative data, and we're making, I have a data science background. We work with researchers who work with community institutions to make sure that everything's legit. Everything we do with everybody, it's surveys that are incentivizing progress for people, right? Show the cost, show how easy it is, and show the benefits of this. Then they've got something to hold on to. And we take it to the city council members and to the other people who have influence on, mayor's office, take it to mayor, show them this. Then there's the other option. Otherwise, if it's not there, they just don't know it, right? It's not their fault for not seeking. They just don't know any better.
I think there's some really, there's some interesting creative things that I've been hearing about too, where you can essentially fund the outcome, right? Like, so if we know a certain healthcare outcome, is going to happen, or if we can quantify the, the real estate, equity that's going to be accrued, right? Then you can actually sort of sell that on the other side. So I think that's kind of interesting too. I don't know, Asif, if you have thoughts too about how the private market can, look at like funding that, or if you have any kind of thoughts around that.
I think it's just like, thinking of ways to give incentive more directly. I played with this idea that, you have given tax breaks to homeowners that want to install solar in their homes, give tax breaks to people who want to install fiber. And now what happens is, if somebody takes out a home equity loan to pay for fiber, even in a rural area where it costs $10,000 to connect a home to fiber, now all of a sudden you've got two things going on. You're getting money back into your home because you're getting a tax break. 82% of all homes in rural areas are owned, not rented. And second, your property value rises the moment you get fiber in your neighborhood. So I think there's definitely room to play around with more direct incentives. I'd love to see that happen. Literally, and it's not hard. It's just pay for your fiber, we'll give you a tax break. Pay, that's it, right? But I feel like where I am now seeing the where this whole story falls apart is the capability around doing the planning, doing the deployment. All that capability is sitting inside vertically integrated companies, and getting that capability to either spin out or that capability to do the work. I mean, you're a great example of that. I think you're the one of the few people I know who's like actively chasing and assembling that capability. Like Luke is a very interesting example of that capability. But like more Lukes don't exist yet, and I think if they did, then that would be a huge win. And I feel like once that happens, then I do think like the floodgates could open. I mean, I my take, everything based on what I've read coming out of Washington D.C., they don't want to give money to AT&T, Comcast, CenturyLink, Verizon, all your telcos. They do want to give money directly, but then there's a struggle around, well, can we deploy it fast enough? Will the job actually get done? And over there, there's definitely work to be done on just the supply chain and getting that sorted.
Well, and I think that brings up an interesting point too, and I'd love to chat with you a little bit about this, Nishal, is in urban areas, it's not always about deploying infrastructure. Oftentimes, there's plenty of infrastructure. What was interesting to me is the latest statistic, I think from a year or so ago in Portland, when they were doing the municipal broadband study, is that 13% of all of Portland didn't have access to broadband, despite having more than one cabled option. So, perhaps, infrastructure, deploying infrastructure, building things isn't the answer. So curious to have your perspective on that, Nishal.
Yeah, I think there is infrastructure there in most cases, but it needs to be upgraded, right? It's not at the same level. It's still so the digital divide is actually a spectrum, no pun intended, right? It's more of a curve, right?
That's an RF joke for y'all.
Geeking it out. Sorry if you hear my dog barking. So there is infrastructure, but it needs to be upgraded. It hasn't been upgraded to provide, these houses might be wired, right? It's just not there. The other thing is affordability. We've got broadband debt and all of these things that don't incentivize building up the infrastructure. The interesting thing is that I know that ISPs are going to the mayor's office in some cases and saying, hey, they don't want municipal broadband. That's what they're trying to stop, right? That's the enemy. So want to stop, prevent that at all costs. Hey, it's not an infrastructure problem. But then they go to like city council members lobbying them saying, it is an infrastructure problem. Tell the mayor's office to give us money to build infrastructure, right? And then subsidize the internet for these communities so we can provide it, which is like running a municipal broadband for them. And it's so complex the way, and I guess different cities would be different in some of these cases, but that's what I'm seeing here.
Yeah, I think, and I think this is the thing that's not really talked about a lot, is that, many people live in apartments in cities, and these MDUs or multiple dwelling units have old copper DSL, right? So you may have fiber along that whole street, but as soon as you step into the building, you're, you've gone back 20 years and you're on 2 meg DSL. But there are some new technologies that you can deploy in buildings like G.hn, G.fast that can utilize existing wiring to get better capacity. So there's some things that we can do, to build infrastructure, or, my thesis, and I think Althea's thesis, is that infrastructure can be opened up and open access and to be shared, as well. So I think we hope that more of that happens as, new infrastructure in cities does get built.
Well, we have a good opportunity because you and I both have relationships with Scenic. And since they're, for example, in California, they're the middle mile administrator, there's an opportunity here. And, they're social good, right? They're nonprofit. Well, are they? Yeah, they're nonprofit, but they may have a for-profit entity as well. But there's an opportunity here for us to again, pilot something that it's another data point to push the narrative so that we can push the policymakers in DC to change things, right? So as we were saying, we just need the right pressure points and the right data to show this, and maybe it'll work.
It's always about showing up and putting in the work. That's show up, put in the work, build networks, right?
Just do it, right? Just do it.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of that's one of my big frustrations with like a lot of the projects is there's a lot of like talking about things, but everyone is like so nervous about just doing anything. So I would like to encourage anyone who's got a project to make, you know, any movement forward is positive movement. So to show up, to do the work.
So can I add something here, Deb?
Yes, please do.
Okay. So here's the thing, right? We slowed down a little bit, even though we work 4 times as fast as a regular company, right? Like we just need to help as many people. So we probably hurt ourselves. We shouldn't do that. But anyway, it's for the people, by the people, not at the people. Anyway, preaching to the choir. So one of the things that I want to bring up though is sustainability, right? Because one of my greatest worries, because I see all these mesh networks in New York Times and this Gazette and all of this, and they're mesh networks that pop up. But as I do the analysis, and I know that OSFI especially and you have been looking at the sustainability plan and the financing for this, and how do you make these networks sustainable? Because if we build these networks and they fail, right, then that creates more of a monopoly because these things don't work. When you go to the city governments or municipal governments, it's like, well, that didn't work, right? So I think it's important for us to also do things, but work smart, not just hard, right?
Yeah, and I think a big piece of that, and I really glad you brought that up because then I get to get on my soapbox and talk about a big thing that's important to me, which is that the folks that work in networks are, you know, paid for their work and are part of the networks and are treated well. You know, we should have networks that can you know, sustain themselves, that can grow as needed, and that can, you know, be, you know, useful to the people working in them as well too, because those are part of our community as well. Which you know, I actually have a bunch of questions that I haven't gotten to yet, but maybe I'll just leap in the last question, which was around digital stewardship. You know, that's a concept that's been kind of thrown around and done in a few ways. I think, you know, everyone knows my my thesis on it is that, you know, people that do the work should get paid. But curious about how you think about digital stewardship. You know, what does that even mean for you? And, you know, what are your thoughts around that?
Me? Oh, yeah. I think digital stewardship is great. When we talk about community building and getting the community involved, I think it's important for that. So students, university students, people from the community who want to do this, it's a great way of getting them involved, getting them to understand the technology. I mean, before you go into that a little bit, can you share what digital stewardship is for our audience who might not know? Do you want to because do you want to tell them or?
Okay. All right. So the way that I understand digital stewardship is it's a broad concept that means that community members get trained and are involved with the process of building and maintaining and sustaining the network for not only the reasons of doing the work within the network, but also empowering especially youth to have these skill sets that they can use and take to other things. So and then oftentimes it's combined with a volunteer type program, which is where I kind of, you know, was talking about a little bit there, but it doesn't have to be. Many of these are actually, you know, paid programs and come with some sort of like certificate that like sometimes they include Cisco training what they can use later on. So that's the succinct.
And that's why I threw it back at you. It was the volunteer part, right? So I think it's great for building community, but I also think it's a great way of digital skills development and workforce development if it turns into job creation, right? To run these networks that's paid. I mean, I look at the networks across the US that started with volunteer work or still do it, and you know, they've ended up going towards, you know, employees that do this. So for us, empowering students and others in advanced networking from the community, enabling them to do this hands-on, like we were in the desert with tribal leaders, right? Hands-on, and that had a huge impact on them, right? And the training, I mean, if they want to continue down this road, if they want to become employees of the network, installation, maintenance, all of this, to transition to that, I'm a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of digital stewardship for building community and knowledge base and local talent. But it's got to transition into something real workforce development, I believe, for it to work, for these networks to work well.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the that was part of the tribal boot camp, but that I think was that's really salient in that, you know, you get that really amazing feedback loop from the community too, right? I mean, I think there was a lot of, you know, good discourse around, you know, how the network should be built and governed and what was going to be most successful. So I think that that's also maybe part of digital stewardship. That's really great about that too, that you have, you know, some that feedback loop about what's successful. So should we get to the actual Q&A that we were working on? I think we've kind of gone through a lot of what I was hoping to go through. But I think it would be good just to, you know, start some discussion around what the challenges to access that urban communities face. I mean, I think we went through a lot, but Nishal, did we miss anything there that you wanted to make sure, you know, everyone knows? Is a struggle, you know, in urban areas, you know, living in San Diego? What are you seeing in the Promise Zone?
Yeah, so digital inclusion, digital inequities is usually thought of, I think the head of NDIA, Angela, says a stool with 3 legs. I actually think it's more of a bench with 4 legs. This bench might end up having 10 legs, but 1 is access to internet, 2 is access to devices, 3 is access to digital literacy, so you know how to use these things, right? But what I really think, we're thinking ahead. Fine, you've got all these things, but if you don't have a purpose for it, you're not going to use it, right? You're not going to become a digital, like, what do we call it? Digital, comfortably digital comfort. I don't know. It's late. So I think digital services is really important, and guiding people through service pathways to Zoom with your grandkid, to you know, getting machine learning training, or using an app for public transportation to report a pothole. How do you even do that so your community is equivalent to the richer communities, right, in upkeep? And, you know, can I make a quick plug? So
yes, that's why you're here.
We launched our platform, the world's first digital inclusion search engine. Wow. That's what we're branding it. So what it does is it enables every community-based organization is now a digital inclusion organization. You know why? Because COVID came, and for them to serve the people, whether it's housing or anything, the people need to be connected to the internet and need to do all these things in the digital inclusion bench, right? Or the stool bench. And that's what we did. We can't work single person. We need to scale this so that we can enable anybody to help anybody and to help themselves. So that's what we built. It's a localized digital inclusion search engine and digital navigator for everyone. We did it here and piloted in San Diego. We're wrapping up that pilot with community feedback always and redevelopment. But big announcement yesterday, the capital region of California, Sacramento and bigger, has partnered with MoHuman to bring that there.
Amazing.
And what I want to do, Deb, is every network that you run, every small ISP, let's put the service layer on it so that we take care of the digital inclusion organization of local services and all of these things to enable people at scale. So you can actually, if you're an organization, you can go help the people directly while we worry about that piece of the tech and that piece of the community arrangement. So I'm pretty excited about that. Props to Valley Vision and, you know, Krista, Caitlin, Nikhil, Kevin and Nanda on my team, the digital rebels that put their time in, because this was truly built by us without much funding at all because we believed in it. It took a while, but I think it's important to have that service layer as well. Otherwise, people still can't function. People still can't get to their needs without knowing how to find these things. And a government website, for example, not a shining example of great user experience. So finding these things and local services from organizations. We also support small businesses, because if you care about economic development of a community as a whole, supporting those micro enterprises with 5 people or less, home businesses, street vendors and so on. These are not supported by the regular like orgs and companies that help small businesses. So helping them to have a digital presence and to be online and to digify their finances, that's also very important for economic development. So I'm getting off my soapbox, but it's a pretty exciting week for us. We held this all so we could announce it. And that's my vision, Deb. That's why I like what we're doing together. Fancy pipes and fancy platform.
I love it. Yeah, and there's a lot that I resonated there. A couple of things I wanted to just kind of draw out from what you said is talking about small businesses and their role in the communities. I think we talked about it a little bit earlier, but communities are not just one thing, right? They're all kinds of, they're a university, they're the small businesses, their homes, and it's really speaking to the holistic, connected nature of our communities is amazing. And then the other thing, I think, it's one of those, the service platform is like one of those things that's neglected, and it's really nuanced, right? So there's things like, access for people with disabilities. If you're blind, you can use everything on the internet as long as you have like some software and some, accessible laptop. And it's pretty simple things, but if we neglect to, give people those simple tools that they need, then you might as well not give them internet at all, right? So there and things like you said, literacy, digital literacy, but also just regular literacy can prevent people's access to the internet. Different languages, all of these kinds of things. Like if you don't meet that service layer, then having packets to the door isn't going to matter. So it is really important that I think we highlight that. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing on that space too. And I think a lot of the reason why we get such high numbers of, disproportionate access in urban areas is because we haven't, met the service layer needs. So we're at 1 minute left.
Yeah.
What was that, Nishal?
Oh, incentives again, right? To get people to use and to use all the hard work that we put into this with the community. We got to continue those incentives, whether social, financial, or psychological.
That's a great point to, I think, kind of wrap things up with. Will, do we have any questions or comments or things you think before we kind of wrap up the conversation? I think we should probably have another talk, Nishal, because I feel like we have another 8 questions that we didn't get to.
Hey, Deb, I always have time for us to chat, especially when we go off script.
Yeah, so we should maybe have a cadence here. I am National Digital Inclusion Year.
Yeah. Oh, we should make up some other holidays like National Networking Day or, infrastructure awareness. It's so boring. infrastructure. I don't know.
The Infrastructure Alignment Day, alignment of incentives.
So many bad jokes are popping in my head right now.
So yeah, appreciate everybody listening today. Like obviously this will be available recorded. Will, any final comments before we sign off?
I know everything's looking good over here. That was great. That's a great talk, everyone.
All right. Thanks y'all for having us. We'll see you later.
Thank you. Bye.